Most men will never understand how the dangerous ones think. They see a calm man and call him weak. They see a silent man and call him passive. They see a man who never reacts and assume nothing is happening inside him. They are wrong. The most dangerous men alive are not the loudest in the room. They are not the ones throwing threats or chasing validation. They are the ones watching, calculating, deciding, in silence, who gets access and who gets cut. Dangerous men are not born. They are built, forged through detachment, hardened through discipline, refined through a kind of psychological alchemy that most people will never even attempt. Machiavelli understood this. He did not write about saints. He wrote about survivors. He wrote about men who mastered the game of reality, not the comfortable version of it, but the brutal, unforgiving, actual version. This is not a motivational speech. This is a map into the mind of the man who cannot be moved, cannot be manipulated, and cannot be touched. If you are ready, let's begin. Number 1. The mind that cannot be moved. The first thing a dangerous man masters is not his body, not his money, not his status. It is his mind, and specifically, his mind's ability to remain completely unmoved in a world designed to destabilize you. Every system around you, social media, relationships, workplace politics, even the people closest to you, operates on one invisible assumption: that you can be rattled. That if someone applies enough pressure, enough silence, enough chaos, enough emotional manipulation, you will crack, you will react, you will expose yourself. And the moment you expose yourself, you lose. Machiavelli wrote that the wise man does not show everything he feels, because a man who reveals his interior gives his enemy a map to destroy him. Think about that. Your reactions are a map. Your frustration is a map. Your desperation is a map. Every time you over-explain yourself, every time you chase someone who walked away, every time you argue to defend your ego rather than protect your position, you are handing someone the exact instructions for how to control you. The untouchable man removes that map entirely. He builds an interior so disciplined, so cold, so architecturally sound that nothing from the outside can structurally compromise what is inside. This is not numbness. This is not emptiness. This is the highest form of psychological construction a man can achieve. A mind that observes everything, reacts to nothing, and decides everything in silence. Drop the word unmoved in the comments if this is already speaking to you. Number 2. Detachment is not weakness, it is warfare. Every weak man in your life will tell you that detachment is coldness, that it is loneliness, that it is some kind of emotional disorder that needs to be fixed. And they will tell you this because a detached man is the most terrifying thing a dependent, emotionally reactive person has ever encountered. Because they cannot control him. Understand this deeply. Detachment is not the absence of feeling. It is the mastery of feeling. It is the ability to look at a situation, a person, an outcome, even something you want badly, and say, I see you. I acknowledge you. And you do not own me. That is not weakness. That is warfare. Machiavelli understood that the prince who becomes too attached to outcomes becomes a slave to those outcomes. And the moment you become a slave to an outcome, whoever controls that outcome controls you entirely. This is how people manipulate you. This is how systems break you. They dangle what you want in front of you. They make you emotionally dependent on receiving it. And then they use that dependency as a leash. The detached man cuts the leash. Not because he does not want things. He wants deeply, he pursues relentlessly, but because his wanting never collapses into needing. And that single psychological distinction separates the man who operates from power from the man who operates from desperation. Desperation is visible. Desperation smells like weakness. Desperation makes you negotiate against yourself before the conversation even begins. The man who has mastered detachment walks into every room, every negotiation, every relationship with the silent understanding that he can walk away. And that understanding, that genuine internal freedom, radiates outward in a way that commands respect without demanding it. People feel it. They cannot name it, but they feel it. They treat him differently. They approach him carefully. They sense that this man is not available for games, not available for manipulation, not available for emotional leverage of any kind. This is the art of psychological untouchability in its earliest and most essential form. If this is rewiring something in you right now, comment detached and dangerous. Let the world know you are shifting. Number 3. Discipline is the darkest form of power. Most men think discipline is about waking up early, hitting the gym, following a schedule. And while those things matter, they are the surface level. They are the visible tip of something far deeper, far darker, far more psychologically devastating to every person who tries to come against you. Because true discipline is not about your routine. It is about your refusal, your absolute, unbreakable, almost inhuman refusal to be governed by impulse, emotion, comfort, or the path of least resistance. And when a man reaches that level of internal governance, he becomes something that the average person cannot comprehend and cannot compete with. Machiavelli did not glorify the passionate man. He glorified the calculated one. He understood that passion without discipline is a fire that burns the man holding it. But discipline applied to passion becomes a controlled, directed, unstoppable force that moves through obstacles the way cold water moves through stone. Not with explosion, but with patience, persistence, and absolute inevitability. Think about the men throughout history who accumulated real power, real influence, real psychological authority. They were not the most talented men in the room. They were the most disciplined. They were the ones who kept moving when everyone else stopped, who kept building when everyone else celebrated too early, who kept refining when everyone else accepted good enough. And that relentless internal standard created a compounding effect that looked like genius from the outside, but was nothing more than discipline maintained long past the point where lesser men quit. Here is the dark truth about discipline that nobody tells you. It is not comfortable. It will never be comfortable. And the moment it becomes comfortable, you have stopped growing and started coasting. Because real discipline lives in the space between what you feel like doing and what you have already decided to do. And the man who consistently chooses his decision over his feeling is a man who is literally rewiring his psychology, building an internal architecture of power that makes him harder every single day, more resolute every single day, more untouchable every single day. The world tries to soften you constantly. It offers distractions, shortcuts, emotional exits, comfortable lies, and discipline is the practice of looking at every single one of those exits and choosing to remain in the fire instead, because you understand that the fire is not destroying you. The fire is forging you, and what comes out on the other side of that forge is not the man who started. It is something colder, sharper, more dangerous, and completely beyond the reach of ordinary pressure. Comment forged, not born right now, if discipline is the weapon you are sharpening. Number 4. The art of silence and strategic invisibility. There is a weapon so powerful, so psychologically devastating, so consistently underestimated by the modern world, that most men walk past it every single day without ever picking it up. And that weapon is silence, not the silence of a man who has nothing to say, but the silence of a man who has everything to say and has made a calculated, strategic, Machiavellian decision to say none of it. because he understands something that the loud, the performative, and the emotionally reactive will never grasp. Information is currency. And every word you speak unnecessarily is currency you are giving away for free to people who will use it to map you, predict you, position against you, and ultimately attempt to control you. Machiavelli wrote that a prince must be a fox to recognize traps and a lion to frighten wolves. But before either of those things, he must first be invisible enough that neither the fox nor the wolf knows what they are truly dealing with. And that invisibility begins with silence, with the mastery of presence without exposure, with the ability to occupy a room fully, to be felt completely, without ever revealing the interior machinery that is running beneath the surface. Most men are terrified of silence. They fill it compulsively, with opinions, with jokes, with explanations nobody asked for, with justifications for decisions that required no justification, because somewhere in their psychology, silence feels like losing, like weakness, like an admission that they have nothing valuable to contribute, when in reality, the opposite is devastatingly true. Because the man who is comfortable in silence, who lets silence sit heavy and unbroken, while everyone around him scrambles to fill it, that man is communicating something that no words could ever deliver as effectively. He is communicating that he does not need your approval, does not need your validation, does not need the conversation to go any particular direction to feel secure in who he is. And that communication lands in the nervous system of everyone in the room before a single sentence is ever spoken. Strategic invisibility takes this further. It is not merely about speaking less, it is about revealing less. It is about understanding that your plans shared too early become targets, that your ambitions announced too loudly attract sabotage, that your emotions displayed too openly become leverage in the hands of people who smile to your face and calculate against you in private. The dangerous man moves in silence, not because he is ashamed of what he is building, but because he is wise enough to know that the world does not need a preview. It needs a result. And results announced after the fact carry a power that intentions announced in advance will never possess. Because intentions can be criticized, doubted, undermined, and discouraged, but results simply exist, undeniable and immovable, speaking with an authority that silences every critic who attempted to speak against the vision before it materialized. This is why silence is not passive. Silence is the most active strategic choice a man of power can make. It is the choice to protect his energy, protect his direction, protect his psychological sovereignty from a world that profits from your exposure and feeds on your transparency. Build in silence. Rise in silence. Let the results be the only announcement that matters. Comment silent and sovereign if you are done explaining yourself to people who were never qualified to understand you anyway. Number 5. How to read people before they read you. The dangerous man does not walk into a room and perform. He walks into a room and observes, and that single behavioral distinction is the difference between a man who gets played and a man who does the playing, because the world is not made up of honest actors operating with transparent intentions. It is made up of people wearing masks, running agendas, managing impressions, and projecting versions of themselves carefully constructed to extract something from you: respect, resources, emotional energy, compliance. And the man who does not understand this will spend his entire life reacting to surfaces, while the real game is being played several layers underneath everything he can see. Machiavelli was not cynical. He was accurate. He looked at human nature without the comfortable filters that make people feel better about the world. And what he saw was this: men are driven by self-interest. They are motivated by fear and desire. They will love you when you are useful and abandon you when you are not. And the prince who builds his strategy on the assumption of loyalty without leverage is a prince who will be betrayed the moment the cost of loyalty exceeds the benefit of betrayal. This is not pessimism. This is the foundational intelligence that separates the man who survives the game from the man who gets consumed by it. Reading people is a dark art, and like all dark arts, it begins not with looking at what people say, but at what they do. Because words are cheap, words are rehearsed, words are the most controllable and therefore the least revealing thing about a person. But behavior under pressure, behavior when there is nothing to gain, behavior in the small, unguarded moments when the performance drops for just a second, that is where the truth lives. And the man trained to watch for those moments collects intelligence that most people walk past completely blind. Watch how a person treats someone they do not need. Watch how they speak about people who are not in the room. Watch how they respond when a plan falls apart, when they do not get what they expected, when someone else receives the recognition they wanted. Because in those unguarded emotional responses, the mask slips. And what is underneath the mask is the actual person you are dealing with, not the version they have been carefully presenting to you. Dark psychology teaches something that complements this perfectly. Most people project. They accuse others of the behaviors they themselves are running. They describe the world through the lens of their own psychology, and if you listen carefully enough, people will tell you exactly who they are, exactly what they fear, exactly what they want, and exactly how they will eventually move against you. Not in direct confession, but in the texture of their language, the patterns of their complaints, the consistency of their blame, and the specific things that trigger their sharpest reactions. The man who understands projection, who understands that a person's criticism of others is autobiography, who understands that what makes someone deeply uncomfortable in you is almost always something they are deeply conflicted about in themselves. That man has a diagnostic tool more powerful than anything a formal education could ever provide. And then there is this. The dangerous man does not reveal that he is reading. He maintains the face of neutrality, of mild interest, of casual engagement, while internally he is cataloging, cross-referencing, building a complete psychological profile of every significant person in his environment, their motivations, their insecurities, their pressure points, their loyalties, their limits, not to exploit gratuitously, but to never be surprised, to never be the last one to understand what is actually happening in a dynamic that directly affects his position and his power. Surprise is the enemy of the prepared mind. The man who has already mapped the room before anyone else has finished their first sentence is operating on a level that most will never reach, seeing moves before they are made, understanding endings before they begin, positioned always one step ahead of a game that everyone else is still trying. To figure out the rules of, comment "I see the game now" if your eyes are opening to a level of awareness you cannot unsee. Number 6. Emotional invincibility. Never let them see you bleed. There is a reason the most powerful men in history were described as unreadable, not because they felt nothing, but because they had mastered something that the majority of the human population will spend their entire lives failing to achieve, and that is the complete and total command of their emotional exterior. The ability to experience turmoil, pain, pressure, loss, betrayal, and rage on the inside, while projecting an exterior so composed, so controlled, so utterly undisturbed that the people attempting to destabilize them were left confused, frustrated, and ultimately powerless. Because you cannot weaponize a reaction that never comes. You cannot exploit a wound that is never exposed. And you cannot manipulate a man whose emotional interior is completely inaccessible to your interference. This is what emotional invincibility means. It does not mean you are made of stone. It does not mean you do not feel. It does not mean you have disconnected from your humanity. It means you have made a sovereign decision that your emotions are yours, that they are internal data to be processed privately and acted upon strategically, not performances to be displayed publicly for the consumption, judgment, and tactical exploitation of people who have not earned access to your interior world. Machiavelli understood that the prince who is seen to be emotionally volatile is a prince who has already handed his enemies the most precise weapon imaginable. Because emotional volatility is predictable, and predictability is the death of power, and the moment your enemies can predict how you will respond to a provocation, they own the outcome of every interaction before it even begins. Which means they are never truly reacting to you. They are directing you, pulling strings you cannot see, because you are too busy being swept along by feelings you have never learned to govern. Dark psychology adds a dimension to this that most men find deeply uncomfortable to confront. And that dimension is this: the people in your life who most consistently trigger your emotional reactions are not doing so accidentally, whether they are conscious of it or not. They have located the specific frequencies that cause you to vibrate uncontrollably, and they return to those frequencies repeatedly because your reaction gives them something: power, attention, confirmation of their own significance, leverage over your behavior. And every time you react, every time you lose composure, every time you raise your voice or fall into silence out of hurt, or chase someone who has deliberately withdrawn to provoke your anxiety, you are feeding a dynamic that is built entirely on your emotional exposure and sustained entirely by your inability to deny it. The man who achieves emotional invincibility does something that fundamentally breaks this cycle. He removes the reward. He responds to provocation with stillness. He responds to manipulation with neutrality. He responds to emotional baiting with a composure so genuine, so deeply rooted, that it is not a performance of strength, but an actual expression of it. And when the person attempting to destabilize him receives stillness instead of reaction, neutrality instead of engagement, calm instead of chaos, they are left with nothing, because the entire architecture of emotional manipulation depends on the target's participation, and the man who refuses to participate has rendered the weapon completely inert. But here is the dimension of this that goes even deeper, the part that transforms emotional invincibility from a defensive skill into an offensive one. When you are the man in the room who does not react, who does not flinch, who processes everything and reveals nothing, you begin to accumulate a psychological authority that is almost gravitational in its effect on the people around you. Because human beings are wired to seek cues from their environment, to look for signals about how to feel, how to respond, how to calibrate their own emotional state, and when everyone else in a situation is anxious, reactive, or destabilized, and you alone remain composed, you become the psychological anchor of that environment. You become the reference point. You become the man that every other person in the room is unconsciously orienting toward. Not because you demanded that authority, but because you earned it through the simple, brutal, daily discipline of refusing to be moved by things that move ordinary men. That is the dark genius of emotional invincibility. It is simultaneously the ultimate defense and the ultimate display of dominance. It is armor, and it is weaponry. It is protection, and it is projection. It is the quietest and most devastating demonstration of power that one man can offer in the presence of others, requiring no announcement, no performance, no validation, just the absolute, unwavering, unshakable command of the one territory that is entirely and exclusively yours, your inner world. Comment unreadable and untouchable if you are committing to never letting them see you bleed again, because that decision alone will change every dynamic in your life. Number 7. The power of strategic withdrawal. Disappear to dominate. There is a move so counterintuitive, so psychologically sophisticated, so completely misunderstood by men who have been conditioned to believe that presence equals power, that most will never make it. And that move is the deliberate, calculated, strategic decision to withdraw, to pull back, to become less available, less visible, less accessible. Not out of weakness, not out of defeat, not out of emotional retreat, but out of a cold and precise understanding that scarcity creates value, that absence creates psychological gravity, and that the man who is always available, always present, always reachable, has unconsciously communicated to the world that his time, his attention, and his energy carry no premium, that he can be accessed freely, approached casually, and taken for granted indefinitely. And, in a world that assigns worth based on perceived rarity, that communication is one of the most strategically devastating positions a man of power can occupy. Machiavelli understood the architecture of desire, and he understood that desire requires distance, that people do not hunger for what is constantly in front of them, that familiarity does not breed respect, it breeds assumption, and assumption is the quiet killer of every dynamic where you once held the superior position, because the moment someone assumes your presence, assumes your response, assumes your availability as a fixed and guaranteed feature of their landscape, they have stopped seeing you as something valuable and started seeing you as something expected. And expected things are not protected, not cherished, not pursued. They are simply used until they are no longer convenient. Strategic withdrawal is the antidote to this psychological erosion. It is the practice of deliberately creating space in relationships, in professional dynamics, in social environments, not as a manipulation tactic deployed from insecurity, but as a power practice rooted in the genuine understanding that your energy is your most finite and most valuable resource, and its selective distribution is one of the primary mechanisms through which a man of Machiavellian intelligence manages his perceived value and maintains his psychological dominance over every environment he operates within. When you withdraw strategically, something fascinating happens in the psychology of the people around you. The assumption that governed their relationship with you is suddenly disrupted. The guaranteed access they had grown comfortable with is suddenly revoked, and in that disruption, in that sudden absence of something they had stopped consciously appreciating precisely because it was always there, they are forced to reckon with your value in a way that your constant presence would never have compelled them to do. Because human psychology assigns significance to loss far more powerfully than it assigns significance to possession, and the man who understands this dynamic and uses it deliberately is operating with a level of social and psychological intelligence that most people in his environment will feel deeply but never be able to articulate or defend against. There is also an internal dimension to strategic withdrawal that is equally important and far less discussed. When you pull back from environments, people, and dynamics that drain your energy, contaminate your focus, or compromise your psychological sovereignty, you are not retreating from the world. You are consolidating. You are gathering yourself, sharpening yourself, rebuilding the internal reserves that constant exposure and constant availability slowly and invisibly deplete. And what you return with, after a period of genuine strategic withdrawal, is not the same version of yourself. That left, you return sharper, more grounded, more energetically potent, carrying a quiet intensity that people feel immediately upon your return. An intensity that would never have developed had you never left, because depth requires solitude, power requires silence, and the man who never withdraws never fully accumulates the internal gravity that makes his presence genuinely commanding rather than merely familiar. Disappearing is not losing. Disappearing is reloading. It is the deliberate creation of the psychological conditions under which your return carries maximum impact, maximum mystery, and maximum authority. And the man who has mastered the timing of his withdrawal and the precision of his return has mastered one of the most elegant and devastating power dynamics in the entire Machiavellian playbook. Comment I move in silence and return with power if you understand that sometimes the most dominant thing you can do is simply disappear. Number 8. Cutting without guilt. The Machiavellian art of elimination. One of the most psychologically crippling things that has ever been done to men is the conditioning, delivered through culture, through religion, through family, through the endless noise of a society that benefits from your compliance, that loyalty must be unconditional, that cutting people off is cruelty, that walking away from those who drain you is abandonment, that protecting your energy and your environment by removing toxic, limiting, or strategically dangerous people from your inner circle is somehow a moral failure, when in reality, in the cold, clear, unsentimentalized reality that Machiavelli would recognize immediately, the inability to eliminate what weakens you is not virtue. It is self-destruction, dressed in the language of virtue, and the man who cannot cut will always be held back, pulled down, and ultimately consumed by the very connections he was too conditioned to release. Machiavelli wrote that it is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both, and embedded in that principle is a deeper truth about the nature of power and relationships. That the man of genuine power does not build his inner circle on sentiment, he builds it on function, on alignment, on the ruthless assessment of whether a person's presence in his life moves him forward or holds him in place, and the moment that assessment returns a clear answer, the Machiavellian man acts on it without hesitation, without extended deliberation, and without the guilt that weaker men use as an excuse to remain in dynamics they already know are destroying them. Understand what guilt actually is in this context. Guilt is not a moral compass. It is a psychological leash. It is the internalized voice of every person and system that ever needed you to stay small, stay accessible, stay emotionally available for their consumption. And it activates most powerfully precisely when you are about to make the move that would most decisively liberate you. Because the systems and people that benefit from your captivity have a vested interest in making liberation feel like sin, in making the act of choosing yourself feel like the act of destroying someone else, when in truth you are not responsible for the comfort of people whose presence in your life is costing you your potential, your peace, and your power. The art of elimination is not about hatred. The dangerous man does not cut from rage. He does not cut from bitterness. He does not cut from a place of emotional reactivity, because all of those motivations are still forms of emotional dependency. They are still evidence that the person being cut holds psychological power over the man doing the cutting. And true Machiavellian elimination carries none of that charge. It is clean, it is cold, it is surgical. It is the quiet closing of a door by a man who has simply concluded through clear-eyed assessment that what is on the other side of that door no longer serves the architecture of the life he is deliberately constructing. There are people in your life right now, and if you are honest with yourself in this moment, you already know exactly who they are, who consume your energy without contributing to your growth, who subtly undermine your confidence while performing the role of supporter, who keep you anchored to an older, smaller version of yourself because your evolution threatens the dynamic that gives them access to you. And the reason you have not cut them yet is not because you do not see it. It is because you have been conditioned to prioritize their comfort over your ascension, their feelings over your future, their need for your stagnation over your right to become everything you are capable of becoming. The untouchable man ends that conditioning permanently. He audits his environment with the same cold precision that a general audits his army before battle, removing the weak links not with malice, but with the clear understanding that in the war of becoming, every person in your inner circle is either an asset or a liability, and liabilities left unaddressed do not remain neutral. They compound, they metastasize, they slowly reshape your ceiling downward until you have forgotten what it ever felt like to operate without the weight of other people's limitations pressing down on your potential. Comment I cut clean and move forward if you are finally ready to build an inner circle worthy of the man you are becoming. Number 9. The untouchable identity. becoming a man no one can own. There is a version of you that no manipulation can reach, that no rejection can collapse, that no betrayal can permanently destabilize, that no opinion, no matter how loud, how persistent, how weaponized, can fundamentally alter. And that version of you is not a fantasy. It is not a distant ideal reserved for exceptional men born under exceptional circumstances. It is a psychological architecture that is built deliberately, brick by brick, through every decision you make to choose your own judgment. Over the crowd's noise, your own vision over the world's skepticism, your own standard over the cheap approval of people who have never attempted anything close to what you are attempting. And the man who builds that architecture, who constructs that untouchable identity from the inside out, rather than assembling it from the outside in through status, validation, and the performances he runs for other people's consumption, that man becomes something genuinely rare in a world saturated with men who are entirely defined by their audience's response to them. Most men do not have an identity. They have a collection of reflections. They are whoever their environment most rewards them for being, whoever their social circle most comfortably accepts, whoever their past traumas have most deeply conditioned them to perform. And they mistake this adaptive performance for a self. They mistake the consistency of their conditioning for the presence of a character, never realizing that a self built entirely from external inputs is not a self at all. It is a prison with invisible walls, a cage so familiar that it feels like home, designed and maintained by every voice that ever told you who you were before you had the wisdom and the strength to decide that for yourself. Machiavelli's prince did not derive his authority from the approval of those he governed. He derived it from an internal clarity about his purpose, his strategy, and his willingness to execute both, without requiring the emotional validation of people who would never fully understand the weight of the position he occupied. And that principle translates directly into the psychology of the modern man who is serious about becoming untouchable. Because untouchability is not a social status that others grant you. It is an internal condition that you construct and maintain entirely independent of. Whether anyone around you recognizes it, celebrates it, or even believes it is possible. Dark psychology identifies the primary mechanism through which people attempt to own other people. And that mechanism is identity dependency. The cultivation of a target's need for external confirmation of their own worth. The slow erosion of a man's trust in his own perception until he requires constant outside input to feel real, to feel valid, to feel like his existence and his choices carry any meaningful weight. And the defense against this mechanism is not aggression, not isolation, not the performance of confidence, but the genuine, deep, unshakable construction of a self-concept, so internally anchored that external turbulence cannot reach its foundation. A sense of identity so rooted in self-determined values, self-assessed standards, and self-directed purpose that the approval or disapproval of any individual, any group, any institution carries zero structural power over. The direction of your life. This is the ultimate destination of everything this monologue has been building toward. The detachment, the discipline, the silence, the emotional invincibility, the strategic withdrawal, the elimination of what weakens you, all of it is infrastructure. All of it is preparation. All of it exists. In service of this single outcome, a man who cannot be owned, cannot be directed, cannot be leveraged, cannot be collapsed, a man whose identity is his own sovereign territory, governed exclusively by his own law, defended by his own clarity, and expanded continuously by his own relentless, cold, Machiavellian commitment to becoming the most dangerous and untouchable version of himself that this life will allow. Comment, I belong to no one, if you are claiming your identity back from every person and system that ever tried to define you without your permission. Number 10. The final transformation. Welcome to the untouchable. You have arrived at the end of this monologue, but understand clearly that this is not the end of anything. This is the beginning. This is the moment where everything you have absorbed, everything that has shifted in your psychology over the course of these 10 parts, everything that has been quietly rewiring your understanding of power, identity, discipline, and strategic thinking, now has to move from the realm of intellectual acknowledgement into the realm of lived application. Because knowledge, that is never embodied, is not wisdom, it is entertainment. And the man who consumes Machiavellian philosophy without implementing it has not become dangerous. He has simply become more sophisticated in his understanding of his own captivity. The transformation into an untouchable man is not an event, it is a process. It is a daily recommitment to every principle that has been laid out in this monologue. A daily return to detachment when the world tries to make you react. A daily return to discipline when comfort offers you an easier exit. A daily return to silence when your ego wants to perform. A daily return to emotional invincibility when pain tries to break your exterior. A daily return to strategic thinking when emotion tries to govern your decisions. And every single day that you make that recommitment. Every single day that you choose the harder, colder, more calculated path over the easier, softer, more emotionally gratifying one, you are compounding, you are accumulating, you are building the kind of psychological mass that eventually becomes immovable, the kind of internal gravity that eventually makes your presence undeniable and your position unassailable. Machiavelli did not promise comfort, he promised effectiveness. He promised that the man who sees reality clearly, who acts on that clarity without flinching, who masters himself before attempting to master anything external, that man does not simply survive the game, he reshapes it. He bends the environment around his presence, rather than being bent by it. He becomes the kind of force that history remembers, not because he was the loudest or the most loved, but because he was the most deliberate, the most disciplined, the most strategically sovereign human being in every room he ever entered. Understand also that the untouchable man is never finished. He does not reach a destination and declare himself complete. He does not collect a certain number of victories and retire from the work of self-mastery, because the moment a man believes he has fully arrived is the moment he begins to slowly, invisibly deteriorate, the moment complacency disguises itself as confidence and stillness disguises itself as stagnation. And the truly dangerous man recognizes this trap and refuses it permanently, choosing instead to remain in a state of perpetual refinement, perpetual sharpening, perpetual expansion of his psychological and strategic capabilities. Because the standard he holds himself to is not external comparison, it is internal excellence. And internal excellence has no ceiling, no finish line, no point at which the work is ever fully done. That is what you are building. Not a performance of power, actual power, not the appearance of untouchability, the genuine, deeply rooted, psychologically unassailable reality of a man who has done the internal work that most will never attempt, who has paid the internal price that most will never willingly pay, who has sacrificed the comfort of smallness for the cold, and magnificent freedom of becoming something that cannot be touched, cannot be owned, and cannot be stopped. This is Machiavellian mode. This is the philosophy that does not apologize for demanding everything from you, because it offers everything in return. If this monologue has changed something in you, if something has shifted, hardened, clarified, or ignited, then comment Machiavellian mode activated right now. Because that comment is not just engagement, it is a declaration. It is you planting a flag in the version of yourself you are choosing to become from this moment forward. If this content is what you have been looking for, hit that like button, subscribe to Machiavellian mode, and turn on notifications so you never miss the knowledge that most men will never be willing to face.